Jacob had 12 sons. Each one became the father of a tribe, the foundation of the nation of Israel. But one of those sons made a single decision that cost his descendants everything. His name was Reuben. He was the firstborn. He should have inherited the greatest blessing of all. So why did his tribe almost completely disappear from history? And what did Jacob say on his deathbed that sealed their fate forever? Reuben entered the world under the heavy gaze of longing and disappointment. Leah, Jacob's first wife, watched her husband's heart slip further from her with every passing day. When her first son was born, she named him Reuben, meaning see, a son, and declared, "The Lord has seen my misery." In a household shaped by rivalry and silent prayers, this child was proof that she had been noticed by God, if not by Jacob. In ancient Israel, the firstborn son carried more than a name. Reuben's birthright meant a double share of inheritance and the expectation that he would lead the family after Jacob. The word yiter, preeminence, was more than a title. It was the promise of legacy, responsibility, and honor. All eyes, including Leah's, rested on Reuben to fulfill this role. Yet the early glimpses of Reuben's character hint at something more complicated than privilege. When Joseph, the favored younger brother, became the target of his siblings' jealousy, it was Reuben who stepped in. "Let us not take his life," he pleaded, persuading the others to throw Joseph into a pit instead. Secretly, he planned to rescue Joseph and return him to their father. This act, quiet and almost desperate, revealed a conscience at work, a firstborn wrestling with the burden of leadership and the dangers of family strife. In that moment, Reuben stood between violence and mercy, holding the fragile line of brotherhood. The path ahead, however, would not be so simple. The turning point arrives with a sentence as brief as it is devastating. While Jacob was still alive, Reuben went and slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine. The text does not dwell on motives or aftermath. It simply states the act, leaving a silence that echoes through the generations. Bilhah was not just another woman in the household. She was Rachel's handmaid, the mother of two of Reuben's own brothers, Dan and Naphtali. In the world of the patriarchs, such an act was never private. To seize a father's concubine was to make a claim on the household itself, to challenge the order of succession before the patriarch's death. This was not the first time the Bible records a son using his father's concubines as a weapon. Centuries later, Absalom would take David's concubines in broad daylight, a public declaration that he meant to claim the throne. Reuben's action carries the same political weight, a signal to everyone in Jacob's camp that the eldest son was asserting dominance, not just over his father's property, but over the future of the family. Jacob heard what Reuben had done. The text offers no outburst, no immediate confrontation, only a tense, unresolved silence. In that moment, the promise of the firstborn hangs in the balance, and the cost of crossing that line is left to smolder in the shadows, unspoken but irreversible. Jacob's final words to Reuben begin with the weight of a father's hope. Jacob says, "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power." Each phrase lingers, echoing the expectation that once rested on the eldest son. In ancient Israel, the firstborn carried the promise of yiter, preeminence, the right to lead, to inherit, to stand at the head of the family. But the blessing does not last. Jacob's voice turns. Jacob says, "Unstable as water, you will not excel, for you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it." The reversal is absolute. In a single night, Reuben's claim to the privileges of birthright, including double inheritance, kingship, and priesthood slips away. The double portion passes to Joseph, divided between Ephraim and Manasseh. The scepter goes to Judah, and the priestly office to Levi. The consequences are not only personal, but tribal. The rights that once belonged to the firstborn scatter across the sons of Israel, reshaping the destiny of a nation. The silence after Jacob's judgment is heavy. A moment's ambition, a single act, and the line of privilege is broken. Reuben stands before his father, not as heir, but as a caution. Proof that preeminence is never guaranteed, and that honor, once lost, cannot be reclaimed. When the land was divided, Reuben's tribe settled east of the Jordan River, far from the heart of Israel's religious and political life. Their territory stretched along the Transjordanian Plateau, a region known for its rolling pastures and abundant flocks. Cities like Aroer, Dibon, and Heshbon dotted this landscape. But the region itself sat on the edge of Israelite society, separated by the river, closer to Moab and Ammon than to Jerusalem or Shiloh. While the pastures brought wealth, the distance brought isolation. Reuben's people tended their sheep and cattle, watching the great gatherings and decisions unfold elsewhere. Over generations, the tribe's absence from the lists of kings, judges, and prophets became its silent legacy. No Reubenite ever rose to national prominence. The separation that began with a single act became a permanent feature of their story, woven into the land itself. Centuries after Reuben's inheritance faded into the hills east of the Jordan, his tribe appears again, but only in the lines of a song. Deborah, the prophet and judge, remembers the days when Israel's tribes were called to battle. She pauses over Reuben, repeating the same question with a tone that hovers between disbelief and disappointment. Why did you sit among the sheep pens to hear the whistling for the flocks? In the districts of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. The words echo as if she cannot accept the answer. Not once, but twice, she returns to it, searchings of heart, searchings of heart. The repetition is not an accusation of cowardice, but a portrait of paralysis. Reuben's people, divided within themselves, lingered in the pastures, listening for the low call of their flocks instead of the trumpet for war. It is the sound of indecision, not defiance, a tribe torn by competing loyalties, unable to move forward or back. In Deborah's song, hesitation becomes its own kind of loss, the echo of a firstborn's promise left unresolved. Tiglath-Pileser III swept across the Transjordan in 732 BC, his armies moving with the precision of a well-practiced machine. The names of the conquered were Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and they were etched into imperial records, stripped from the land that had once promised safety and abundance. The biblical account in 1 Chronicles names the places of exile: Hala, Habor, Hara, and the region of Gozan. These were not just distant lands, they were the end of a story that began with birthright and hope. The chronicler does not linger on the details. The text simply states that the Reubenites were carried away, their fate sealed by a power far greater than any they had known. Archaeological digs in the Kabur Basin reveal a sudden influx of Western pottery and human remains with Levantine signatures, silent witnesses to the forced migrations. Assyrian tablets list the households of Reuben among the captives, their names preserved only in administrative records. The reason, according to the source, is as stark as the event itself: unfaithfulness. The Reubenites abandoned the God of their ancestors, turning instead to the gods of the peoples around them. The sequence unfolds without pause: conquered, exiled, dissolved. Once the tribe crossed the border into exile, their identity began to fragment. The old names faded from the land east of the Jordan. The tribe that had once stood at the threshold of leadership vanished into the swirl of the Assyrian Empire, absorbed into the legend of the lost tribes. There would be no restoration, no return to prominence, only a memory, scattered across foreign rivers and distant valleys, echoing the cost of a promise broken. Yet the story of Reuben does not end in silence. Across the centuries, after exile and disappearance, his name surfaces again in the most unlikely place. Right there in Revelation chapter 7, verse 5, 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben. The text does not explain how or why. It simply lists Reuben alongside the other tribes, counted among those who are sealed. No record of return, no restoration in the land, yet the name endures in the closing vision of Scripture. The tribe that vanished east of the Jordan is not forgotten. In that single line, the absence is interrupted by a promise, a reminder that even lost stories can echo in unexpected places. For Reuben, the final word is not erasure, but inclusion. His name spoken once more with hope. Today, Reuben's inheritance lingers only in ancient names and scattered traces. The silence of a lost tribe still echoes, a reminder that privilege, once forfeited, rarely returns. Every legacy now hinges on the choices we make and the shadows we leave behind. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.